Welcome to Blanken Dinner. You know, it seems as if the Tories' whole entire campaign is beginning to unravel a bit.
Yeah, Theresa had a really tough week, didn't she?
You know, we're starting to see the fact that there's no substance behind her constant sound bites, strong and stable. Now there isn't a magic money tree, is
No.
what she told one nurse. You know, I did that review on Battle for Number 10 with the interview with Jeremy Paxman.
Right.
And you know, when I was looking through all the video footage, this was probably about the third time that I was watching it now, that section. You know, what I found really interesting was that she looked so uncomfortable. You know, she was out of her comfort zone, and it's like she didn't want to be there.
No, and you could hear the trembling of her voice in the beginning section, where the audience would ask questions. You could hear her voice trembling. And I can still see her face in front of me when he said to her that everybody in Brussels must think she's just a blowhard who falls over by the first sound of gunfire.
Yeah.
That was the moment of the evening, wasn't it?
Well, it was definitely something where I thought she might hit back with something witty, but you know, she didn't. The thing is that what people are realizing is that she does lack substance behind her. It's all talk, and if you analyze anything that she says, you go around in a massive circle, and you sort of end up where you started with the question, because she hasn't answered it.
She goes on about Jeremy Corbyn, is planning to raise taxes. And then today in an interview, she was question again whether she would rule out increasing income tax after the general election. And she simply refused to answer. So their promise of not raising taxes doesn't seem to be, very firm either.
When you look at who's funding the party and who's backing Theresa May to stay number 10,
Yeah.
What you come to realize very quickly is that it's all the big cats. It's the big corporations who don't want there to be higher corporation tax. And they want to protect that so that they can, fill their coffers and continue to evade paying their fair share of taxes.
But watching BBC Question Time, what I find actually astonishing is that people went on and on and on and on with Jeremy about whether he would authorize the use of nukes. That seemed, for the audience, that seemed to have been one of the biggest issues.
You'd have thought that maybe social care, school system, the funding of schools, the funding of the NHS, things that actually really matter would have been the first thing on people's minds.
Yeah, poverty.
I mean, homelessness. All the things that actually are least well funded in this country, and where they're worrying about who can throw the biggest punch and kill lots of people. I think the reason why people are so focused on weaponry as being a priority is the fact that there's been so much scaremongering in recent times. I mean, we live in really difficult times in terms of terrorism and terrorist threats, and there is reason to be fearful. There is reason to want to feel protected. But is it that the answer, or is the answer to have more firepower? People always talk about the fact that we don't have politicians who actually are not about just taking care of the people at the top. He is such a person. He comes across as being such a person. We know that when he says the things that he says, that he's being genuine, because this is social equality, economical equality. These are things that he has been fighting for from as long as he's been in politics, and actually even before that, going right back to his teenage years. So it's well documented that this is a person who believes in those in those values, and we're seeing it coming right through in his manifesto.
Which I find really interesting when you look at some of the audience questions again on Question Times. They're very much around that him, increasing the living wage to £10 an hour, which I still have no idea how you can live, a sustainable life at that sort of amount. That would wipe out many smaller businesses. And then you could be really controversial and say, if you can't pay people £10 an hour so that they can somehow get by in their life, then maybe you just don't have, unfortunately, a sustainable business.
True.
If you don't have a business which makes enough money, how can you then expect for somebody who is less fortunate than you are, maybe, to work on a ridiculously low hourly salary just to make your business work?
Yeah. But we're talking about basic needs here. We're not talking about people going off and living lavish lifestyles. We're talking about people being able to afford clothing, heating, food, the basic things that you need. And you hear someone saying earning £10 an hour, and you think the cost of living is quite high.
I think in the end of the day, the biggest problem Conservatives have, they have a candidate running for them who is just not believable. I think people don't trust her. That's what I don't like about her. And whether you like what Jeremy is saying or not, as he seems to stick to his opinion, regardless what, you can clearly see that in all of the debates and all of the interviews, he's not changing around, not doing U-turns. I think that's what people see in him.
Yeah,
and it really...
he's about principle. So, one of the interesting things that maybe a lot of people forget about Jeremy Corbyn. So I mentioned this before, when he was, as we know, he went to a grammar school, but he was very active politically there, and he had campaigned for it to become a comprehensive, right? Of course, it failed. It wasn't very popular, but, he still went ahead and did it anyway. Even in his personal life, he, again, wasn't very popular with his wife when they argued about, whether their eldest son, who was 11 at the time, should go to one of the country's best grammar schools, which he didn't want for him to go. He wanted him to go to a comprehensive school, and she didn't. And, it became such a sticking point. And it's not a very happy ending for them that they'd separated because of on that issue. But, it just goes to show that, he's just very principled, and he's going to stick to his principles no matter what. So even if he isn't left being popular, or the favorite in the group, or be seen to do what everybody else wants him to do, if his principles don't allow it, he's not going to do it. And I think that's a good quality to have. Leo Varadkar is a name you won't forget in Ireland, because he's to become the new Prime Minister. And he's gay. I don't know much about him other than he used to be the Minister for Tourism there.
He's also really young. He's 38 years of age.
38, okay. But that's all I know about him. I don't know anything about his policies or what he stands for. I did read that he said so very similar sort of wording to Jeremy Corbyn, that he's there for for the I think it's the article said that he's there for the people who have to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, or really early in the morning, or something to that effect. But basically, sort of very similar sort of message to Jeremy Corbyn, although he's a conservative.
Yes, but I think he is part of that, what we discussed last time, new generation of politicians, who are coming through. And not only is he gay, he is also of Indian heritage, I think.
Yeah.
Which makes him quite unique, and apparently he doesn't really like that, because obviously he is Prime Minister because he thinks he is a very good politician, and he happens to be gay. I think that's the way how he sees it. But I still think it's newsworthy. But actually in Europe, that's not the first, is he?
No, he's not the first. Now he'll be joining 3 other European countries that have had gay leaders. One being
Iceland.
Iceland had a lesbian prime minister. Then there is Luxembourg.
Yes, and Belgium.
And Belgium. And Luxembourg still has a gay prime minister.
Indeed. So also in Germany we had senior figures in government who were openly gay. One of our foreign secretaries was openly gay. He unfortunately passed away, but he left quite a mark on German politics.
Well, I suppose it'd be interesting to see, what what comes from him. And I'll definitely look a little bit more into him because he sounds like an interesting person. Not just the fact that he's gay, but I think on the subject of LGBT rights in Ireland, that's only in the recent last few years that's moved in a huge momentum forward. So I think this kind of shows a sign of the changing times there. Because I had a friend of mine who is gay and who's from Ireland, and he said very much that there's still that you don't come out as gay, it's not very widely accepted in sort of the mainstream sense, and certainly not in families. You still have that, if you like, traditionalist you need to get married and have children sort of way of thinking. Definitely interesting in the sense that they seem to be moving all very much in the right direction on that point.
Absolutely, and it's just great to see how society has completely changed. If we were going back 20 years, you would simply not find that, and that it simply doesn't seem to matter anymore. And most probably it is how he thinks it is. He is a very good politician, and he just happens to be gay.
Yeah,
and
which is how it should be. It shouldn't matter. Come into it, really.
Absolutely, and it's just a true reflection also of society.
So now we have Donald Trump making a bit of a mess again.
An absolute mess. He is joining Syria and Nicaragua, not being part of the Paris Climate Accord. Absolutely. Three countries of all countries in the world have not signed up for this climate accord, and that is now
including one of the biggest superpowers.
Absolutely.
In the world.
And it's so ridiculous. And then when you saw his press conference to that topic, he clearly didn't know what he is leaving. He has no clue.
But he's mostly clueless about everything, isn't he?
That's very true.
But
he's consistent.
Exactly. Yeah. But he could teach Theresa May a thing or two about consistency.
That's very true.
But you know what was funny? I think I read a small piece of an article where he was talking about renegotiating the agreement, which baffled all of the leaders, because they're thinking this is not something that's imposed on you. You sign up to it; it's voluntary. So there's nothing to renegotiate.
No, absolutely, and this is why he actually doesn't understand what he just did. And also, you can't just renegotiate something which took nearly 20 years to negotiate in the first place. But then there's obviously one woman who didn't seem to be so baffled from it, because Theresa May didn't sign the shared letter between Macron, Merkel and the Italian Prime Minister to condemn his actions, and her words were fairly mild.
Well, this is it. This is exactly the sort of thing that I'm talking about. When you think about the crisis with LGBT rights in Chechnya and how long it took her to come out and say anything, this is her taking the safe line. So she's kind of doing it to save face, to be seen as saying or doing the right thing without actually doing anything at all. So she hasn't taken part in something that was, really a symbol of people saying, these world leaders saying that is not okay. But she's then come out with this very sort of not too committal statement against what he's done, so as not to ruffle his feathers too much.
Absolutely, and when you then look at other leaders, at Macron, for example, who actually choose to give his press conference on the matter in English, clearly condemning him. He's clearly inviting American scientists to come to France and had them to work on the topic. And I would too. And also Angela Merkel, in her way, left a very strong message for Donald as well. She just said, that she is extremely disappointed and she chooses her words very carefully. And you can read in that whatever you want. But I think there's some strong statements, and it's interesting to see how Donald Trump is completely isolating himself more and more, not just within the US, but also on the global stage.
But I mean, he doesn't care, does he?
No.
He doesn't care.
But then all his staff seem to be totally confused as well, because when you watch all the interviews, obviously they ask everybody they can get in front of the camera from his staff. They will ask whether they believe Donald Trump believes in climate change or not, but there is no clear answer coming out of any of them. I don't even think his staff knows what Donald Trump thinks.
I don't think they would say anything anyway, not openly, because apparently he's got quite a bit of a temper on him.
I wonder when his moving out date is actually.
I mean, do you think that he's actually going to leave the White House, or they're going to have to drag him out kicking and screaming?
I actually think he will resign with some weird reason at some stage, because pressure's mounting everywhere. Now there are rumors that he will try to prevent Comey from actually speaking to the Senate Committee for Intelligence. Then his son-in-law apparently trying to build secret links to Russia. There's so many stuff happening. One of them will blow up.
And to make matters worse, there's also a rumour that Melania is having an affair with one of his senior Secret Service staffers. So, we don't know if things could get very, very bad for Donald Trump.
Well, at least she is sufficiently protected, isn't she?
Indeed. So anyway, the other thing that I found really interesting is Piers Morgan obviously had made these controversial statements about Ariana right after the tragic and very saddening bombings at her concert in Manchester, criticizing her for not visiting the victims.
Yes.
And this was off the back of a tweet from Katy Perry when the Queen visited, and she was saying, how good of the Queen to have gone visit, and he said, oh, well, she is, but, also Ariana should have gone. Now, of course, he got a huge amount of backlash for that statement because it was clearly ridiculous. I kind of think, she's a victim as well. Anybody who was at that concert and you're in that space and this thing has happened, you're going to have some trauma.
Absolutely.
Right? So she did the sort of thing that everybody would have done in her shoes, and indeed people who were there, they you go home to see your family, you want to get their reassurance, their protection, whatever, and he made a big thing of it. And and I think it's reasonable that she did go home and she wanted to probably see her family and feel secure, because of course naturally you're afraid, you're scared, aren't you? Something like that happens, and on top of it, you are it's your concert and people have come to see you and they get killed and injured. I mean, you must feel a huge sense of responsibility for that, and I can't imagine how putting the other trauma aside of just fear of your own life and just that sense of helplessness, on top of it, you just don't know what to do. So of course you do what everybody would do. You run to the people that your family, your friends, people who can sort of comfort you through that. And he wasn't having any of it. So anyway, very shortly after that, she announced that she was going to come back to the UK and launch her One Love tour, or One Love concert rather, which was going to be in aid of all the victims and their families. You know what really annoys me?
Yeah.
Is that he's got a massive audience, a massive platform, and people have died and been affected in a horrific attack. The only thing he could come out and do, to use his platform to do, is to target one of the victims.
Absolutely.
Because regardless of what he thinks, she was involved in this. She's been impacted by it, not just because she's a performer, she's a human being. She was impacted and affected by it. And she reacted in a very human way. But, the point is that what was he doing with his massive platform? And whilst other stars and people with similar platforms to him were fundraising and, starting up, working with the Red Cross to raise funds in aid of the victims and their families, all he could do is go on Twitter to sling mud at somebody who is obviously going to be affected by this issue, by this horrific attack.
Absolutely. And I think that is just another Piers Morgan incident, isn't it, unfortunately? But that seems to paint a very dark picture of his character, I would think.
Well, he doesn't have any character, does he? No. I think, he is literally just about... He's what you call... He's one of those people who literally just does things to get a reaction. And I think he's actually addicted to it.
Anyways, but then Ariana actually went and saw victims today. She went to the hospital in Manchester and met many of the injured children there. But equally, she also went and visited some families who sadly actually lost relatives in the tragic event.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And most importantly, she's helping.
Yeah, exactly. Which still, as far as I know, Piers Morgan hasn't done anything. If he has, he's kept it very, very much a secret. But it wouldn't be in his character to do that, would it?
Certainly not.
He would be shouting it from the rooftops if he had done anything.
Yes.
Anyways, sadly, I just read about 10 minutes ago that there's been another suspected attack, this time in London Bridge. There are reports saying that a van was driven into a crowd of people at London Bridge. So the reports say about 20 people were hurt so far, but we don't know if there are any casualties or anything like that. It's a suspected terrorist attack, but they haven't confirmed that yet. Again, unconfirmed reports of gunshot and apparently a stabbing.
Yeah.
But again, it's all very sketchy, so no details as yet. But apparently, the security services swooped in very, very quickly and were, on the scene and, were there. But it just sounds very much like Westminster Bridge all over again. It's, very scary. So, hopefully those people haven't been... haven't sustained, life-threatening injuries, and people will make it through, and let's see how the story unfolds.
Yeah, it's certainly scary times, isn't it?
Thanks for watching Blank and Dinner. Join in the conversation by commenting below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you soon.